battle for Mosul. Emily Hawthorne joins us now from Texas in the United States. She's the Middle East analyst at Stratfor Forecasting. Emily, good to speak to you. So just how do you think the fight for Mosul is proceeding so far?
You know, as you mentioned in that intro from your correspondent, the advance has slowed as really the ISF and Peshmerga forces have encountered a lot of pushback from the Islamic State in the form of ambushes, IEDs, suicide vehicles, and the like. It's only looking like it's going to get much worse as the advance nears the city itself. And that strategic district just to the east, the environs of the city, those outer environs of the city, that's where the eastern push has reached. Now we're looking at sort of the southern advance to the city and watching to see how they are going to make their way up to the actual perimeter of the city from there. So advances have been slow, but they have made steady progress along the way, just encountering a lot of pushback from the Islamic State, which makes us wonder what they're going to encounter when they enter the city itself.
Absolutely. Well, I'll leave the city there for a second. If we look more regionally, there are lots of competing interests going on, namely Turkey and Iran, and of course Iraq involved in trying to take back Mosul. Just how do you see that playing out once the city is taken back from Daesh?
This is the big question. You know, the advance throughout the Mosul operation as it's been ongoing for the past just over 2 weeks, and as well as all the preparations before then, all signs point to this operation probably being a successful one to retake the city from the Islamic State. But the gnawing question is what happens afterwards. And as you mentioned, Iran is interested, Turkey is interested. Iraq, of course, is trying to hold on to administration of the city of Mosul. But there were a lot of concerns among the Sunni population within the city itself that Baghdad didn't care for their needs. And that was one of the ways in which the Islamic State was able to work with the Sunni population and advance so quickly on the city itself. So solving that problem is going to be difficult, and it's only made more difficult by the competing interests from Turkey, which is looking to maintain its influence in northern Iraq, to make sure that it maintains its economic and political influence in northern Iraq. That's primarily in Kurdistan, but they also want to make sure that they have a say in what happens in the administration of Mosul. Iran, of course, is very vested in Iraq and wants to make sure that their forces are active in the country. Now, they are adhering to Baghdad's commands so far. So it's really a question of, as the advance continues, what happens if there is coalition infighting. We're not seeing that yet, but that's the concern.
Absolutely. Well, that's the political and the military outcome potentially. Now, what about the humanitarian situation? Of course, there are maybe 1 million people still in the city, thousands who have fled. Just how do you see that actually working out in the next coming months as the city is eventually liberated and these people have to find somewhere else to live?
This has been a concern that the UN has said is going to be the largest humanitarian issue that 2016 has witnessed worldwide. The issue of internally displaced people coming from Mosul and the environs has attracted a lot of international response, but it's really the issue of how do you administer, govern, and set up Nineveh province, within which Mosul city sits. How do you administer that moving forward? How do you make sure that people's grievances that were there well before the Islamic State came in, how do you make sure that people are receiving the care and the services that they need so that they're not co-opted back into any sort of extremist ideology, so that you can stop the ability of extremist groups, which are not going to be completely eradicated through this offensive? How do you stop their ability to recruit people? So that's one concern from the outflow of people from Mosul. If they're not feeling cared for by the Baghdad government or by the international agencies that are trying to care for them, there's a concern that people will be pulled again back into that ideology. There's also a concern of just how do you care for this many people that have been pushed out of cities. We're talking in upwards of 1.2 million people that are going to be looking for temporary housing. So this is a security concern. This has manifold health concerns. And it also feeds into sort of the global migration issue right now, where you're going to see Iraqis seeking to flee beyond the borders of Iraq and trying to cross through Syria, trying to cross through Turkey and make it onward. So this is a global problem, really.
Absolutely. Well, Emily Hawthorne there from Stratfor, thank you for joining us.